smart buildings, converged networks, there's no actual threat there until somebody comes at that with a malicious intent.
You're listening to Smart Thinking, a podcast from WSP. I'm Matthew Marson, taking you on a journey into smart buildings. In this podcast, we're talking about cyber-physical security. Peter Richards is in the studio today to talk through all things security. With 10 years with the UK counter-terrorist team of the British Army, an ASIS physical security professional, a Class 1 data systems engineer, and with an MSc in security risk management, he'll provide us insights into security risk management and technical security system design. Peter is now head of WSP's Security Risk Management Division based in the Middle East. Peter, welcome.
Hello, Matt.
First question for you, Peter, is what is a smart building and why should we care?
So, a smart building, in my opinion, is a connected building where all of the subsystems, may it be lights, vertical transportation, air conditioning, they're all connected together. And why should we care? Well, buildings are becoming smart, and with that, we are creating not only a better user experience, but we're creating vulnerabilities which can be exploited through intention or just through vulnerability, shall we say.
At the start of the podcast, we introduced this as cyber-physical security. What is that?
What this means is it's not the theft of data, although that is obviously a big concern to many users. My concern is the physical threat to people. So cyber-physical would not be the loss of your bank account details. It would be something information-driven that results in a physical harm to somebody. So that could be anything from a vulnerability in the air conditioning system, which leads to a building that becomes unusable just because it's 28 degrees. That's a business continuity issue. And it's something that really results in a physical harm or an unusability from a business continuity perspective.
So for instance, if I could hack into a cooling system, I could say heat up a data center and potentially set it on fire.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the second there's a problem with an air conditioning system, then you have a dollar value cost with anything that impacts that system. But you could also have a problem with vertical transportation. You know, we're in London. If you can't use an elevator, it could quickly become a major problem for a business.
So you could trap people in a lift, for instance.
Well, you could just stop the lifts from working.
Okay, yeah, then you would be in trouble.
You know, in a building like the Shard, which is very close to WSP, if the lifts don't work, you're going to expect somebody to walk 80 floors to the Shangri-La's lobby? No, you're not.
It seems that given the promise of the Internet of Things, or IoT, by having kind of digital systems control something in the real world, do you think we're asking for trouble?
I don't think we're asking for trouble, but we have to just be aware of the risks. And it doesn't have to be the intent of, you know, hackers and these malicious people. It can just be the smartness of things creates a vulnerability of things.
So what, you think it could be too smart for its own good?
I think it just has to be managed well with some foresight. That's what I would say.
So if you were to be designing a smart building and you were considering the security of it, what would your 3 must-have factors be?
I, being a security professional, I would probably come at it with a must-have not factors. And I would say, first of all, smart is not something that should be considered by the IT department. It should be considered as a holistic approach. The smartness, the networking, and the physical experience, that is key, the whole holistic approach. And we in WSP, of course, have engineers in every system, but if you talk to any engineer and ask them about smartness or the Internet of Things, they'll think IT, but it's not IT. It's IT wrapped around everything that we do as a company, actually.
Understood. There are, it seems, a growing number of high-profile kind of case studies or examples of where something's gone wrong. For instance, the company that was hacked through their IoT fish tank, or Target losing 3 million of its customers' records through a vulnerability in the building management system. Have you got any examples that you can share with us as a warning?
I have one example which I can and cannot share. It was a client of ours actually in the USA, and it was a transportation agency, so government entity, and they lost their access to their email accounts for 1 week. That's it. We don't have to discuss it really. If any company loses email for 1 week, it's a serious issue, of course. But honestly, I really don't think we've seen anything yet. So my expectation is that we're going to have what we call in risk a black swan event, which is the event that nobody thought about, but after it's happened, it becomes obvious and everyone says, why didn't we think about that? It was a massive incident.
One of the big questions that my clients are always asking me is around security to do with their networks. And when you think about smart buildings, the big question is, should I have a converged network or should I have a separate network? Have you got a view on that?
Yeah, I have several views on it. It really depends on which region we're talking about. As a consultant, obviously, I would advise my client on the benefits of dedicated or converged. Converged is cheaper, it's faster, it's easier to pull cables. All of these things we think about as engineers when we design and build these structures. But yes, of course, there's risks. There are risks in redundancies, so we have to think about topology. In the region I live, Dubai, for instance, all security systems have to be on their own dedicated network to appease the local authorities, a law called Law 24. And every region, the authorities will have their own stance and posture on whether it should be converged or not. Really, I would say every project, every building needs to be approached in its own right. And there are benefits for converged and dedicated, but there are also dollar costs to both as well.
I just want to go back to an earlier point around cyberphysical. Don't you think it's quite odd that a traditional engineering company, as how we're considered, is now looking at cyber-physical security?
I don't think it's odd. I think it's forward-thinking, and I wouldn't work for a company like WSP if it wasn't forward-thinking. My background is counter-terrorism, and really, as an ex-soldier, we're talking bullets and bombs and physical harm. But things have matured, and we're really talking about risk mitigation to our clients. And what are our clients doing? Well, they are investing in iconic developments, very large structures, and they need the best service they can get in terms of risk mitigation and protection. So
what kind of things are you doing as part of that then?
Well, traditionally we would do things, a security risk assessment, which could be anything from identifying the most critical assets that you have. Most buildings' critical assets are the same. The electricity, the telecommunications network. It depends if it's a hospital or a bank, but whatever's needed for that building to continue its business continuity. So if you remove an asset, you remove a functionality. Traditionally, as structural engineers, we would do blast assessment modeling, and this would be, what happens to the facade and the structure of a building when a car bomb goes off. And we would do 3D modeling, but the threat profile has changed and we're now talking smart, and a smart threat can again remove complete functionality of a building, which would impact our clients significantly.
And what about the human side? Are you looking at anything to do with social engineering?
Yeah, we look at social engineering. Really, the human side is the only side we look at. The number one asset to protect is human life and well-being. But, we don't have to talk about hackers. We're not talking about people who try and attack your network. You can attack the human side. It's actually the easiest way in. You try and manipulate somebody through their naivety, and that's the easiest way to hack a building, actually.
And do you find that's quite common?
Very common, yeah, very common.
Have you got any examples of some of the sorts of projects that you've worked on with this type of specialism?
Well, we have, as WSP, we have a security risk department, of course, and we look at, again, the holistic threat. So we've done everything from walking into a bank, holding a phone and a briefcase, and just seeing how far into that bank we can walk with purpose. People don't like to stop you. Basically, low-paid junior employees don't like to challenge somebody who looks like they belong. But we've also done, network hacks as the cybersecurity team. So we would do it physically, logically, smartly.
Awesome. Sounds like an interesting range of services. A big thank you to Peter Richards for joining me in the studio in London today. In our next episode, we'll be tackling how today our access passes basically mean that we carry around a picture of our face. But what if in the future we could just simply use our face? We'll be joined by WSP security lead Matthew Brittle. If something in this episode has piqued your interest, then have a chat with us. Email smart@wsp.com. You've been listening to Smart Thinking, a podcast from WSP. I'm Matthew Marson, and thanks for listening.